It was a quiet morning on the lake, the kind of morning you wake up grateful for. The sun spilling gold over the water, a soft mist rising like a prayer to the sky. I'd lived here for almost 15 years, in the little cabin my grandfather built with his own hands. Every plank, every nail had a story. And on that morning, I thought my story here would last forever. But I was wrong. I'd been at odds with the HOA for months, ever since I'd refused to donate part of my land for their new lakefront clubhouse. My property sat on the stretch of shoreline, and they wanted it for themselves. They called it community development. I called it stealing. And they hated that I wouldn't bow down. It started with small things, petty fines for unapproved landscaping, anonymous complaints about loud music that never played. They even tried to claim my grandfather's dock was an illegal structure, but through it all, I stayed calm. I thought if I keep my head down, they'll get bored and move on. Then came my boat. That old wooden beauty had been in my family for decades. My father taught me to fish on it. I'd taken my daughter out on it every summer since she could walk. She loved feeling the spray on her face as we skimmed across the lake, laughing until our cheeks hurt. It wasn't just a boat, it was a piece of our history, and I kept it tied to the dock, polished and cared for like a sacred relic. Before it happened, the HOA president, a smug woman named Lindy, cornered me in my driveway. "You know," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "if you just sold us the shoreline, all these tensions would go away." I laughed in her face. "This is my land, Linda, my family's land. You're not taking it?" Her smile dropped in an instant. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You're going to regret that." I didn't think much of it till the night I smelled smoke. I woke to the sound of crackling. At first, I thought it was a campfire somewhere down the shore. But when I opened my front door, I froze. The glow on the water wasn't the moon, it was flames. My boat was engulfed, the fire so bright it lit up the trees. For a moment, I couldn't move. My heart pounded. My breath came short. Then the reality hit. Done it. The HOA had taken the one thing they knew I couldn't replace. I ran toward the dock, but the heat was unbearable. The smell of burning wood and fuel filled my lungs. Choking me, I stood there, helpless, watching as my boat to ash. And over the roar of the fire, I swore I heard laughter. In that moment, something inside me shifted. This wasn't just about a boat anymore. This was war. The fire burned long into the night, until nothing remained but a blackened skeleton bobbing in the water. I stood there in the flickering light, my fists clenched so hard my nails cut into my palms. Every creak of the burning wood felt like a knife twisting in my chest. When the sirens finally came, I thought finally, justice. But the moment the sheriff stepped out of his cruiser, I knew something was off. Sheriff Daniels. I'd seen him at HOA barbecues, standing next to Linda with a beer in his hand. He wasn't here to help me, he was here to clean up their mess. "What happened here?" he asked, pretending not to notice the obvious. "My boat's on fire." "That's what happened," I snapped. "Someone torched it." He glanced at the smoldering wreck like it was nothing more than a trash fire. "Been an accident. Old wood, maybe a gas leak." "Don't insult me," I said, stepping closer. "That boat was fine this afternoon. This was arson, and you know it." He sighed, the way people do when they're pretending to be patient. "Look, without proof, there's nothing I can do. No witnesses, no cameras." He paused. "Unless you've got something you want to confess?" That's when it hit me. He wasn't just dismissing me. He was trying to turn it around. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice low. "Are you seriously trying to pin this on me?" He shrugged. "Sometimes people burn their own stuff for insurance." My blood ran cold. "That's what Linda told you to say, isn't it?" His jaw tightened, and for the first time, his friendly act slipped. "You should watch yourself, son. You keep stirring trouble for the HOA, things are going to get worse for you." He left without even filing a proper report. Just like that, my boat was gone. The case was dead, and the message was clear. The HOA could do whatever they wanted, and the law wouldn't touch them. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the porch, staring at the lake, replaying every conversation, every warning. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't about the shoreline anymore. They wanted me gone. And if burning my boat didn't do it, they'd come for something else. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't planning to run. 3 days passed, 3 days of silence from the HOA, but I could feel it, the calm before the storm. Then, on the 4th morning, I awoke to the sound of pounding on my door. Not a polite knock-a threat. I opened it to find Linda standing there, flanked by 2 men in pressed polo shirts with HOA badges pinned to their chests. She had that fake smile again, the one that never reached her eyes. "Morning," she chirped, like we were old friends. "We need to talk about your property." I didn't invite her in. "If this is about the shoreline again, you're wasting your time." Her smile twitched. "Actually, it's about your membership. After recent incidents, the board voted unanimously to terminate your access to all community amenities." I laughed, shaking my head. "You burned my boat, and now you think you can kick me out of the lake." "I own this lakefront, Linda." Her voice dropped, venom replacing sugar. "Oh, you will need permission when we take legal action to remove you. You've become a safety concern." I stepped forward, closing the gap between us. "The only danger here is you, Linda." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't flinch. She just handed me an envelope. "You'll be hearing from our lawyer. Might want to start packing." I tore the envelope in half right there and let the pieces fall to the ground between us. She didn't pick them up. She didn't need to. Her real threat wasn't in that letter, it was in the way she smiled as she turned to leave. That night, it started again. First, my power flickered and died. Then the tap water turned brown and undrinkable. The next morning, I found fresh tire tracks near my shed and deep scratches in my truck door. They weren't just trying to scare me, they were trying to make my life here unbearable. What Linda didn't understand, this land was my bloodline. My grandfather fought for it, my father protected it, and now it was my turn. So I started watching, listening, keeping notes, because if they wanted war, I was going to give them one, and this time, I'd make sure they didn't see the first strike coming. I spent the next week pretending to do nothing, pretending to be beaten down, pretending Linda had one. But every night I sat in the dark by the window, notebook in hand, documenting every suspicious noise, every strange car that passed. I installed a motion sensor camera by the dock hidden in a birdhouse, another one in the old maple tree near the driveway, and then I waited. The break came on a Thursday. Just after midnight, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel and saw faint headlights crawling toward the shed. My heart started pounding, but I stayed perfectly still. Watching through the curtain, 3 figures got out to men in dark hoodies, and one woman I'd know anywhere. Linda, I couldn't hear their words over the chirp of crickets, but I saw her point toward the lake, then toward my cabin. One of the men pulled something from his Jaquita can of gasoline. My jaw clenched. This wasn't intimidation anymore. This was arson again. I slipped out the back door, moving low and quiet. Every step felt like a lifetime. When I was close enough, I hit the button on my phone, activating the floodlights I'd rigged earlier. The whole yard exploded in white light. Linda froze, deer in headlights, her eyes wide and unblinking. "Smile for the cameras," I said, stepping into the open. One of the men dropped the gas can and bolted for the car. The other hesitated, looking at Linda for direction. But she just stood there, pale and rigid, like a kid caught with her hand in the cookie jar. "You're trespassing," I said slowly. "You're committing a felony, and now I've got you on tape." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I could see the calculations in her eyes, whether to beg, threaten, or deny. In the end, she went with denial. "This isn't what it looks like." "Oh, it looks exactly like what it is," I shot back. "And tomorrow morning, I'll be delivering this footage straight to the sheriff's office. Let's see him ignore it this time." She tried to stand tall, but her voice cracked. "You'll regret this." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "I think you will." They left fast tires spinning gravel into the dark. I watched until their taillights disappeared, then went inside and locked the door. For the first time since my boat burned, I felt like I had the upper hand. But I also knew Linda wouldn't give up. She'd just get more desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. The next morning, I drove straight into town with the memory card from my hidden cameras tucked safely in my pocket. I didn't call ahead. I didn't give anyone a chance to warn the sheriff I was coming. When I walked into the station, Sheriff Daniels looked up from his desk, already frowning. "This better be good," he muttered. I dropped the memory card onto the counter. It's better than good, it's evidence. Footage of Linda and her goons trespassing on my property with gasoline. Try ignoring that. He hesitated, then plugged it into his computer. The color drained from his face as the video played Linda caught in perfect clarity. Pointing toward my cabin while one of the men carried the gas can, I leaned forward. Now, tell me again how this was an accident. He didn't answer right away. He just sat there, clicking his pen over and over. Finally, he sighed. I'll file a report, he said, but you should know. Linda's claiming you threatened her last night. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. She came onto my land in the middle of the night with gasoline, and I'm the threat. He gave me a look I'd seen before, the look of a man stuck between the truth and politics. She's filing for a restraining order. Says you've been harassing her for weeks. If it sticks, you won't be allowed within 100 feet of her or the HOA office. It hit me like a punch to the gut. That was her move. If she could legally keep me away from the HOA meetings, she could push through whatever community development plans she wanted without me there to fight them. I gritted my teeth. You know, this is garbage. Maybe, he said quietly, but the court doesn't always care about maybe. When I walked out of that station, the anger burned hotter than the fire that took my boat. She wasn't just trying to ruin my life anymore, she was trying to paint me as the villain. And if she won that battle in court, I could lose everything. That night, I sat on the porch with my father's old journal in my lap. He'd written something years ago during his own land disputes. A man doesn't win by playing the other man's game. He wins by changing the rules. I realized then I'd been reacting to every move Linda made. But now it was time to make my own move, one that would end this war for good. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I pored over every HOA bylaw, every land record, every dusty folder in my filing cabinet. I knew there had to be some technicality, some buried clause that could flip the board's power on its head. By dawn, I found it in the original development agreement, written decades before the HOA even existed. My grandfather had negotiated a lakefront ownership covenant. It stated that the owner of my parcel controlled exclusive riparian rights to the shoreline, meaning not only did I own my dock, I legally controlled who could use that section of the lake. If the HOA wanted to touch my shoreline, they needed my written consent. And here's the kicker: failure to obtain that consent was grounds for me to revoke their lake access entirely. I could shut down their entire boating program with a single signed notice. I called my lawyer a quiet, sharp-witted man named Harris who didn't scare easy. When I laid it all out, he grinned like a wolf. They've been so busy trying to burn you out, they never thought to check if you had the bigger match. He said, we spent the next week building a case: photographs, historical maps, affidavits from old neighbors who remembered my grandfather. Laying claim to the shoreline, every time I thought about Linda's smug face, it fueled me to dig deeper. Then, on the morning of the next HOA meeting, Harris and I walked in side by side. The room went silent. Linda's smile faltered for just a moment, then came back, brittle and tight. You can't be here, she said. Restraining order. I held up a court document. Dismissed. Turns out false claims don't hold up when you've got video evidence. Her eyes narrowed, but I didn't give her time to speak. I dropped a thick folder on the table. This is my formal notice, revoking HOA access to my shoreline and dock, effective immediately. You no longer have the right to launch boats from this section of the lake. The murmurs around the room swelled into chaos. One of the board members actually stood up and shouted, You can't do that. Oh, I can, I said calmly. And I did, according to your own bylaws, without my shoreline. Your boating program is non-compliant, and without that program, you lose a major source of revenue. Linda's face went pale. She knew exactly what this meant. I leaned forward, my voice low but sharp. You tried to take my home. You tried to destroy my name. Now I own the one thing you can't replace. So here's my offer. Drop every fine, every false claim, and stay the hell off my property, or watch your precious HOA crumble. The room fell silent. For the first time, Linda had no comeback. For a few days after that meeting, the lake was quiet. No more surprise visitors. No more petty vandalism. Even the late-night phone calls stopped. It felt almost too easy. Then came Friday night. I was locking up the shed, when I heard Ita's sharp crack from down by the dock, followed by hurried footsteps. My stomach sank. I grabbed my flashlight and ran. When I reached the shoreline, the beam lit up a shadowy figure crouched by the edge of the dock. She turned, and the light caught her face, Linda Dot. In her hands was a crowbar, and behind her the planks of my dock had been pried halfway up. She wasn't just vandalizing it, she was trying to dismantle it. Thought you'd get the last word. Didn't you? She spat. Thought you could humiliate me in front of the board. You think you own this place? I do own it, I said, my voice low and steady. And now you're going to answer for it. Her eyes darted toward. Sure. And that's when I saw the flash of red and blue in the distance. I smiled. You remember that hidden camera that caught you last time? I added another one down here. Been recording the whole thing, and I called the sheriff before I even came down. For the first time, she looked afraid. Really afraid. The squad car pulled up moments later. Sheriff Daniels stepped out, his face unreadable till I saw where his eyes went first. Not to me, not to Linda, but to the camera still recording. No politics could save her this time. Not with the footage, not with the crowbar still in her hands. He cuffed her without a word. She tried to twist, to shout about setups and rights, but no one listened. The sound of her voice faded as they drove her away. The HOA board voted to remove her as president. My fines were erased. My property rights were put in writing, public, permanent, and untouchable. And one morning, I sat on the dock my rebuilt dockwit with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise. Paint the lake gold. The water was calm again. I thought about my grandfather, about the fights he'd faced to keep this land. I thought about my father's words change the rules. In the end, I didn't just win. I made sure no one could ever try to take this place. From my family again, and as the sun rose higher, I realized something. The lake had always been mine. Now, so was the peace.